What deathless power! A conversation with Steinbeck to problematize the role of the ethnographic researcher in education. A presentation by Esther Fitzpatrick, December 2012. Like captured fireflies. In her classroom our speculations ranged the world. She aroused us to book-waving discussions. Every morning we came to her carrying new truths, new facts, new ideas, cupped and sheltered in our hands like captured fireflies. When she went away, a sadness came over us, but the light did not go out. She left her signature upon us, the literature of the teacher who writes on children's minds. I've had many teachers who taught us soon forgotten things, but only a few like her who created in me a new thing, a new attitude, a new hunger. I suppose that to a large extent I am the unsigned manuscript of that teacher. What deathless power lies in the hands of such a person. John Steinbeck, 1955. Dear John, I love your poem. I want to be that teacher. I want to listen to the stories that children and others bring to me, cupped and sheltered in their hands like captured fireflies. I am now about to embark on a research project that involves listening to and gathering stories about what it means to be Pākehā.
Dear Esther, I am well pleased you appreciate this poem. It was written for you. It was written for all teachers, educators and researchers who are involved in the business of listening and interpreting the stories of others. I have come to believe that a great teacher is a great artist, and that there are as few as there are any other great artists. Teaching might even be the greatest of the arts, since the medium is the human mind and spirit. But I do have a few questions. Firstly, what is a Pākehā? And secondly, why is listening to their stories worthy of your attention?
Dear John, where do I begin? The terms Māori and Pākehā represent one of the oldest identity paradigms in New Zealand, and remain today powerful ways by which New Zealanders relate to one another. Pākehā are usually understood as the white European partner in New Zealand's bicultural relationship with Māori, the indigenous people of New Zealand. Understanding the development of identity in New Zealand is a significant undertaking, since it is complicated by recent globalization, polyethnic communities, and a bicultural relationship between two founding peoples, indigenous Māori and Pākehā settler. The development of an ethnic identity for Pākehā is even more complicated by their history as colonists, their hegemonic position in society, and for some, their ignorance of white privilege. As a result of its turbulent history, the term Pākehā is a multivalent term, fraught with a myriad of contentious meanings and sentiments. Pākehā have been described in a myriad of ways. Awatiri, you have no culture. Hoi, what culture you have is borrowed or appropriated from Māori. Makrenana, you Pākehā are attempting to claim indigeneity. Turner, you are in a place of internal exile. Marota, there is no evidence to support the existence of a Pākehā culture in New Zealand. To answer the second question, Pākehā are an emerging ethnic group who have no other home. A form of multicultural education has persisted in New Zealand, emphasizing the authenticity of minority groups and further essentializing ethnic groups, and mostly ignores the existence of Pākehā. The concern here is that this practice further isolates and stereotypes particular groups, which can result in racism. Although New Zealand's curriculum vision statement asserts that all children will be given an opportunity to develop a positive identity, Pākehā consistently demonstrate that they struggle with articulating a positive ethnic identity and a sense of belonging. Following is a poem I wrote nearing the end of my last research project of my own journey of becoming Pākehā. Ontos. To be. I am, I was, I will be. The truth. Travelling, becoming, an identity. In flux, in between, entangled. Belonging, becoming me.
Dear Esther, thank you for your detailed description of Pākehā. I guess in some ways you are in a similar position to whites here in America. I have seen some marvellous things here in America, but it has always seemed strange to me. The things we admire in men, kindness and generosity, openness, honesty, understanding and feeling, are the concomitants of failure in our system. And those traits we detest, sharpness, greed, acquisitiveness, meanness, egotism and self-interest, are the traits of success. And while men admire the quality of the first, they love the produce of the second. How do you propose to go about listening to the stories of Pākehā educators and interpreting them as truthfully as you might? How will you tell of those traits we also detest, tell of our failures, our self-interest, and yet be ethical to your participants? As to your poem, remember, as you travel through life and continue this journey of becoming, the journey is a person in itself. No two are alike, and all plans, safeguards, policing and coercion are fruitless. We find that after years of struggle, that we do not take a trip takes us. Enjoy.
Hi John, I'm exploring the stories of Pākehā educators and how being a Pākehā influences their practice. This will involve 3 ethnographic projects: autoethnography, duoethnography and performance ethnography. I will be using a post-critical ethnographic bricolage as a framework. I'm paying particular attention to how as educators we write on children's minds. Reading through some survey questions last week which explore the relationship between adolescent understandings of ethnic racial identity and school experience, I was struck with how we unconsciously write on children's minds. This survey was given to hundreds of adolescent children in New Zealand, including Pākehā. I wondered how they interpreted the following questions. I have a strong feeling of hatred and disdain for the majority culture. I dislike many of the things that the dominant culture represents. People from the dominant ethnic group are vicious and nasty. I hate people from the dominant ethnic group. My negative feelings toward the majority culture are very intense. Syed, Jun and Zhang's recent research on the impact of the survey on participants would suggest these Pākehā students would be made to feel uncomfortable and internalize the negative images portrayed about their ethnic group, or become resistant altogether.
Dear Esther, you are speaking in some other language. I can't understand much of what you said, other than it involves a lot of stories about you. Why are you in the centre of this research? Is it just going to be a whole lot of belly-button gazing? Poor wee Pākehā me? Is this research just about you? Where did this discontent start? You are warm enough but you shiver. You are fed yet hunger gnaws you. You have been loved but your yearning wanders in new fields. And to prod all these there's time, the bastard time. As to the survey questions, These remind me of what provoked me to write like captured fireflies. My 11-year-old son came to me one day.
How much longer do I have to go to school?
About 15 years.
Oh, Lord, do I have to?
I'm afraid so. It's terrible, but I'm not going to try and tell you it isn't. But I can tell you this. If you're very lucky, you may find a teacher, and that is a wonderful thing.
Did you find one?
I found 3. They all loved what they were doing. They did not tell, they catalyzed a burning desire to know. Under their influence, horizons sprung wide, and fear went away, and the unknown became knowable. But most important of all, the truth, that dangerous stuff, became beautiful and very precious.
Dear John, sorry to misrepresent what I am doing. I am very aware of the concerns that this type of research can be misunderstood as indulgent, and possibly sometimes these concerns are warranted. Starting out on this research journey, I've become fascinated by the story of my ancestors. I am now a complete Ancestry Online convert. As part of my research, I am hoping to create a wire Pākehā, and while playing around with wire one afternoon, I started to think about these ancestors. Wire. I am drawing out the wire. It is neatly bound like my grandma's yarn of wool. I am imagining how I will weave my wire Pākehā. I draw out the wire carefully, knitting, weaving, tuku koru. I draw more wire, and remember an ancestor who drew wire in Thurgoland, an ancestor who used wire in Sheffield, an ancestor who manipulated wire in Auckland to make my papa's crib. And then I think of number 8 fencing wire and remember an ancestor who won a bet building fences in Christchurch, New Zealand. My mother's chicken wire, Chinese bantams, Rhode Island red. And then I remember running a race across the paddocks, dodging the cowpats, smeared with paspalum, zap, my first electric fence. So why am I telling my stories of being Pākehā? Firstly, I felt it was important to begin with telling my stories of being Pākehā and to weave this in a critically reflexive way through the whole process. I felt it was important to begin with my story to make transparent in the larger story how I was situated, so others could comment, juxtapose their stories against, and add to this script. This provides an opportunity for the voice of the researcher to be identified and enables me to explore personal knowledge to inform educational philosophy and pedagogical practice. Autoethnography is defined by Ellis, Adams and Buchner as an approach to research and writing that seeks to describe and systematically analyze personal experience in order to understand cultural experience. One ethical dilemma I have is the tension between telling Pollyanna stories and or the brutal stories. One story, for example, is Goldie and Me. I am sitting in a special room in Auckland Library. Before me is a box that contains one family's history. I am prowling excitedly through the contents. I've always liked to play the part of detective, uncovering secrets. I read a story about a great-great-uncle who was best friends with Frederick Goldie, a famous New Zealand artist in the 19th century. The story paints a marvellous picture of my relative, his exploits as a conservationist, a gardener, a photographer and painter. But what I especially enjoyed reading about was his relationship with Māori, who gifted him with many treasures. Goldie also gifted my relative with several of his paintings. It was a stunning story until I turned the page. After he died, whose wife burnt everything. Everything. Yes, I know what you are asking. Everything.
Dear Esther, always which story should we tell? And how and why do we select particular stories? This is a marvellous story. I can imagine which of these is the firefly cupped and sheltered in your hand, and which of these is locked up in a box in a cupboard in a museum. And when speaking for others, just remember, no man really knows about other human beings. The best he can do is to suppose that they are like himself.
It is here that I hear the voices of 3 other researchers. Firstly, Anderson. Esther, as the researcher, I suggest you consider being explicitly a full member of the research group. Engage yourself in analytic reflexivity. Ensure you are visible in published texts. Also, engage with other informants. And you must be committed to the agenda of improving understandings of broader social phenomena. And then I hear Alice, who says, I believe as the main researcher you must consistently defer to the participants in the study through providing access to their stories and being open to their responses, acknowledging their feelings and giving them opportunity to express how they feel about how their stories have been represented. Also, attend to alteration of identifiable characteristics. The attention is always the impact on integrity of research. Your role is to protect the privacy and safety of others. And lastly, Star. Verisimilitude. You need to evoke in the reader, the audience, a feeling that the experience described is believable and possible. You need to make them feel connected, that they can see the world from your point of view. Oh, and is it useful? Will it help them to understand the lives of others and to improve their own?
Ah, yes, I like Anderson's idea of being engaged in analytic reflexivity throughout, such as a personal journal. Such an important and useful strategy. I often use a personal journal when writing, such as when I wrote the first draft of East of Eden. That particular journal was actually published in 1969. It primarily consisted of a series of letters I pretended to write to my editor, but which were never mailed. These letters helped me to prepare myself for a day's writing. I also recorded personal thoughts, ideas for plot, characters, etc., questions to follow up on, and so forth.
Hi, John. Thanks for that. I've actually planned to use a personal journal. This will be an essential part of my documenting reflections, poetry and visual art through the process. The second project I alluded to is a duo-ethnography. My aim with this project is to involve myself with 5 other educators who are Pākehā to explore in a collaborative inquiry how being Pākehā has influenced what we do as educators. I've been working with a colleague and friend for a few months, writing a duo-ethnography. It has been a fascinating journey, but we've also encountered a few ethical issues. We've entered into a research relationship which is described as with another rather than on another. Both my colleague and I, as the researchers, are the site of the research. Part of this relationship is a contract to publish together. We are aware that our relationship is of paramount importance in this endeavour, and have taken note of Nodding's ethics of care. We are fortunate that, in keeping with Norris and Sawyer, we have already established a respectful, trusting and caring relationship. In the duo-ethnographic process, we are able to assist each other in the process of sharing stories. We are receptive to each other's stories and are open to transformation. My colleague and I are exploring how our position and experience in our families have influenced how we respond to our roles in the university. Through our beginning exploration of this topic, our primary ethical concern is our right to tell the stories of those who we are close to. The dining table.
It's not a very safe place for a lot of people.
And then you were talking about that dinner time, and that brought back in a negative memory. You have warm memories of your family, but the dinner table was not a positive memory. So when you refer to family, you refer to them as the household? Were there warm memories?
Actually, I feel a bit uncomfortable about what I said, and I wouldn't want her to think that I would write about it.
I know what you mean. I was reading through the transcript and I thought, ooh, that was not always true. This storing seems to highlight the flaws and make them stand out rather than the wholeness of her. All her goodness is not seen because her flaws are more vivid in this story. Norris would say, I hope you are aware that your relationship is of paramount importance in this endeavour. Have you taken time to establish a respectful, trusting, and caring relationship? Your commitment to each other is to assist each other in the process of sharing stories. That you are receptive to each other's stories and are open to transformation.
Dear Esther, never heard of duoethnography before. Sounds to me like a good excuse to get paid for sitting down at the pub with a mate for a gossip. But what really worries me is who is protecting the stories of those who you and your colleagues are in a relationship with. What right do you have to disclose their stories? Ha! But in saying that, I did enjoy writing about the character Kate in East of Eden, modelled after my second wife. She was evil incarnate. It actually helped me to pull myself together after one of the lowest points in my life.
Hi, John. Yes, the concerns you have highlighted concern me and my colleague as well. Norris and Sawyer, founders of this approach, recognise the potential harm of disclosing the stories of others who are in relationship with the storyteller as the most problematic aspect one must consider. Cognizant of this issue, they suggest I tell the story without placing any judgment on the other, and that I ensure I make it explicit that the story is told from my point of view.
Be faithful and do no harm.
What matters is that the researcher is always aware of the consequence of the message. Perhaps here my Christian upbringing still speaks to me. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I too have stories I am not prepared to publish on the world stage. The last project is performance ethnography. Saldana describes performance ethnography as a methodology that involves presenting to an audience the dramatization of research participants' experiences and or researchers' interpretations of data. This gives me an opportunity to work creatively with the data and present it in a palatable form for people in the Academy and outside the Academy to engage with and respond to.
Dear Esther, can't wait for this. What a wonderful way to take the richness and complexity of life stories and reimagine them for others to respond to. Here is a way to take the fireflies that have been gifted to you and share them with the world. Just remember, creativity and research requires increased attention to questions of responsibilities. Questions of power are central to this.
Hi, John. Yes, I'm well aware, but thank you again for watching over me. I'm quite excited now. My proposal has been accepted and the ethics ticked off, so I'm busy getting ready to read, write, play, draw, and construct a wire pakeha. One of the ideas is to create composite characters to increase anonymity of individuals for the final script. Yes, I know what you're thinking. I won't take words or incidents out of context, and although the scenes will be fictionalized, they will represent themes that emerge from the data. I've drawn up a plan of action. Looks rather full. and an essential part of this plan is to publish as I go.
Hi, Esther. Have you heard of a chap called Baxter? He might be worth looking up. Had a lot to say about Pakeha and their lack of a certain interior facilities that other races have regarded as part of the normal human equipment. Sent me a few poems years back about Harry Fat and Uncle Sam, and his concern about the influence America had on New Zealand politics. A lot of his poems, I believe, were autoethnographic, always on about trying to understand his own past to unlock the prison doors of the present. I leave you with a few stanzas of his poem. To a print of Queen Victoria. I advise rest. The farmhouse we dug you up in has been modernised, and the people who hung you as their icon against the long passage wall are underground. Incubus and excellent woman, we inherit the bone acre of your cages and laws, this dull green land suckled at your blood's frigor Anglicanus.